I got a fucking bingo, bitch. We are going to be going over Q3 and Q4. I did film a video for Q3, aka January to March, but I hated it. I despised it. Every second I was spending editing it, which was not long, to be fair. It was maybe 10 minutes I tried, and I gave up. I was like, fuck that shit. I'm not making a separate video. We're doing one big video encompassing all of the books I read in the last 6 months that got me to this bingo point. So as usual, we will be going square by square. I clearly have not done the 24-hour reading challenge. In the subgenres of choice, the only new thing I added was Quicksilver into the romance subgenre for fantasy, so a romantasy. If you want to hear my thoughts, I will link the video for it down below and probably somewhere fucking up here. For the series staircase, we have quite a few new additions. So for the solo, I put in When the Tides Held the Moon by Vanessa Vida Kelly. If you want to hear my thoughts, that is in my romance reading vlog. Then I also read The Strength of the Few, which is the second book in the Hierarchy series. I read that in this video. Recently, I tried reading Morning Star by P.S. Brown. I have just come to accept the fact that he knows how to hook me from the start, but unfortunately, something about his writing I hate with a burning passion. Burning passion. So I've decided to stop trying. I don't think I will ever attempt to read one of his books ever again. It was a DNF, but I was able to add this still to the HRCYED spreadsheet, to my HRCYED prompts, because in HRCYED, for every book that you read, you earn a certain amount of points, and you can then use those points to count a reread, count a DNF. There I think are a few other ones, but I basically just used the DNF function. I like hoarded all of my points just for these last few months. So I used all my points now, and we'll get to the other books that I used my points for. But yeah, hated that. I did read up on like just a summary of the plot, because I was kind of curious, like, where did this go? And I'm so thankful I did not read this book. I think if I had to read what happened in absolute excruciating detail, I would have probably thrown someone off of a cliff. It would have angered me more if I had to read that. Just, no, I refused. And I'm glad I refused. Okay, then for the 4 or more, we have 2 additions to the Raven Boys cycle. Is it the Raven? It's the Raven cycle. We have the Dream Thieves and Blue Lily, Lily Blue. Obviously, I can't talk much about the details of the books, but I gave Dream Thieves 4 stars, I think. And then I gave Blue Lily, Lily Blue 3 stars. So the Dream Thieves follows one of the characters of the main cast, or like it kind of hones in on them a little bit more, and he's my favorite of the group, so I enjoyed that book immensely. And then Blue Lily, Lily Blue, I finished literally, I think it was the last book I finished for this challenge. I think the plot felt a little bit more all over the place. But overall, if you are looking for a like paranormal, slightly spooky, contemporary fantasy book for young adults that isn't like the romantasy type of young adults that has become quite popular. I'm talking like proper young adult. Like if you need to recommend a book series to a teenager, this series just feels perfect for that. But unfortunately, I was not able to read the last book in time, so I was not able to finish the series staircase category. Then for award season, I also added in When the Tides Held the Moon. You will be seeing When the Tides Held the Moon quite a few times because of secret prompt number 8. I was able to add this in to a bunch of different categories. So if you see it a lot, that's why. And then I also added Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson. Not Quite Dead Yet was recommended to me by my cousin. She's a big Holly Jackson reader. She devours this woman's books, and she wanted me to read at least one of her books. So I got to this. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. The premise of the book is essentially this main character, someone attempts murder. Okay, someone tries to kill her. Fortunately, she survives the encounter. However, she did suffer from a brain injury that is only going to let her live for another week. This, however, does give her enough chance to try and solve who tried to murder her. I think the mystery of it kind of kept me on my toes. I was having fun trying to guess who did it. I usually do with any kind of mystery book. My biggest issue why I docked it down quite a bit was mainly just the writing. They were really, I don't know, the writing felt strange to me, especially at certain moments. There's this very specific section where the character, or no, the writer, is explaining to us in detail, I'm talking it's a full fucking 2 pages, explaining how this character is using the forgot password feature to log into something. I'm talking, she clicked this button, she went to her email, she looked for the email, like almost like a step-by-step guide. Like she's assuming the person reading this has never in their entire life forgotten a password and had to use this feature. It felt very strange. Like it felt like this was aimed at a really old person or a really young person who's never owned a phone or had a social media account of any kind. It just felt very awkward. And there were other moments also where it like felt very over-explained. So that was my main issue. But another thing I really enjoyed was the fact that the brain injury is taken very seriously. Like there isn't just a magical cure. She does suffer a lot of symptoms because of this, and I'm glad it was taken seriously. I was really like, this woman better not be pussyfooting around with this, like she needs to be taking this seriously, and she did, which I appreciated. I know this is not my cousin's favorite Holly Jackson, however, so she will probably eventually get me to read, I think, which one was her favorite? I can't remember which one it is. Then I completed the TBR challenge square. At the start of Q4, aka April, I was like, we're doing this. I'll do a quick rundown of the books and the ratings, but if you do want to see a more in-depth review, you can watch the video. So this is a TBR game of my own making. It's based on the AO3 homepage, or just the way I use that homepage. So it shows you 3 random things that you have marked for later, and I usually use that to read one of them or just scrap one of them, which in this case would be a DNF. And I used that premise to make my own little TBR game. So if you are interested in that, definitely check it out. For this challenge, I read Biased. This is a non-fiction talking about racial bias. So it's a book about sociology, just the way the human brain works and interprets the information it's given and how that generates bias. So I left this unrated. Then I also read Game Changer. So this is just a male-male hockey romance. I gave this 2 stars. I didn't like it that much. Then I also read Diary of a Void. This is Japanese translated fiction. It's a little bit weird. I gave it 3.75 stars. Then I also read You Did Nothing Wrong. This is by C.G. Drews. This is a thriller, horror, kind of a haunted house story, but you don't really know if it is really haunted or if there's something else going on. I gave this 3.25 stars. And then for the last 10 years, I added in Morningstar for 2016, Game Changers for 2018, and then I also added in the Fires of Vengeance for 2020. So the Fires of Vengeance, I also used secret prompt number 84, so you will also be seeing quite a bit of this book. So this book is by Evan Winters. It is a African-inspired fantasy novel. This is the second book. The third book is not out yet. So we're following our main character Dahl as he is going on a quest for revenge. We learn a lot more about the magic system and about Isihogo. It's kind of like a version of the Upside Down in Stranger Things. It's this demon version of the real world, and it's kind of the source of the powers, the magic system in this world. There's a romance that happens in this book that I just really wasn't jiving with. It was cute by the end, but I just wasn't really jiving with it, mostly because I feel like I have quite a disconnect from the characters, but I'm not sure if that's done intentionally to mirror the way that the main character experiences life. He kind of avoids personal connection to a certain extent because he's so hyper focused on his quest for revenge. So I don't know if it's an unintentional result of that or if it is intentionally done by the author. I feel like this book does an excellent job of kind of re-inviting you into the world, because at the start of the book it kind of does a quick rundown of the plot of the first book. So if you've taken quite some time to get to the second book, like it did me, you don't really have to worry about rereading the first book, because it does kind of quickly go through what happened, so it does give you a nice reminder. But I just love the way that it was done, because it's essentially the main character explaining what's happened to a character that is completely incapacitated. This character can't move, can't speak, can't indicate in any way how he's feeling about what the main character is saying. And it was so funny because that character, we're seeing this through his point of view, and he's just steaming on the inside. He's hating what is being told to him right now. He's just like, oh, this dumbass. Like, he's so angry, and it's so funny because then the main character, he's being so earnest and he's kind of expecting the response, if he was able to respond, to have been positive. So I just found that really funny and a fun way of bringing you back into the world. So don't be scared if you haven't read the first book in a while. Ultimately, I gave this 3 stars. I think it's a solid second book, and I still want to read the next book whenever that's happening. Okay, then in all the adaptations, I only added Game Changer because I watched the Heated Rivalry show. Technically, I could have done these without having read their source materials. Like, you only really need to watch or read the adaptation for this to count, but no. But yeah, so I finally got to Heated Rivalry. I really liked it. Then we have the Disability Challenge. So January, I was popping off. I'm not even joking. 4 of these books were read in January. What is happening with my hair? Okay, so the coin used to be here in the first position because the main character has what the reader assumes is OCD, but because it's never confirmed, I didn't really feel comfortable leaving that in there. So then I put in Blue Lily, Lily Blue, because one of the main cast is deaf in one ear because of something that happens in the plot. So I can't go into detail, but yeah. But then I also added Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson in because of the brain injury. Like, it does affect her quite severely, but it is over a very short period of time. It's literally over a week. So that's another one I'm really uncertain about if it technically is supposed to go in here. Like, I don't feel like I have to abide by the rules that strictly because I'm not submitting this in to Q, the creator of the challenge. I think I would have been a bit more harsh on myself for even that little bit of uncertainty if I was submitting it. Okay, so in the Strength of the Few, I can't really talk about who the amputee is because it is quite a bit of a spoiler for the first book. So just know that one of the characters is an amputee. Actually, more than one of the characters is an amputee. And now that I think about it, there is a blind character in the book as well, though because of their magic system, she is able to perceive the world around her, just not through her eyes. And then I also read in my romance vlog Get a Life Chloe Brown. The main character has chronic pain and fibromyalgia. Then the other book I read in January was That's Not How It Happened by Craig Thomas. This is about a family where one of the children in the family has Down syndrome. The mother writes a tell-all memoir about her experience as a mother of a child with Down syndrome. The book soars in popularity, and then they want to make a movie adaptation. The husband, who is kind of a down on his luck screenwriter, or that they take this opportunity to kind of give the script to him so that he can write the story. However, he takes quite a bit of liberties with his retelling of their family, or specifically his wife's story. So this one is a little bit messy. I really just disliked this man. He was giving man in a derogatory sense. Like, I felt so angry towards him, and I felt like it wasn't really resolved by the end. I think it deals with raising a disabled child quite realistically, but at the same time also from quite a place of privilege. Like, they are able to give their son, like, they literally bought a coffee shop to have him work there, so they essentially gave him job security for the rest of his life. Like, the way that they help him is not the way that most people would be able to help their disabled child. And I think it's very endearing to see that they are able to do that, but I think it's also not necessarily realistic. I think I gave this 3 stars. I think I was a little bit disappointed as well because the author is a writer for the show How I Met Your Mother, and I was rewatching it at that point with my cousin. So I was really like excited for the humor in the book, but then for the Heritage Month, the only books I added was Get a Life Chloe Brown into Black History, and then I also added Lost Lambs by Madeline Cash in for Women's History. Neither of these books are historical in any way, but whatever, they fit. So Lost Lambs by Madeline Cash. This is a literary fiction book following this family with 3 daughters, where each daughter is essentially weirder than the next. It's an extremely funny book to me. I feel like the humor is quite specific, but it meshed with me so well. I absolutely adored it. One of my favorite, so to say, running gags throughout the book was the fact that the church in the town where this family stays is infested with gnats. So every single time until the gnats are exterminated, every word in the book that has the letters N-A-T, it was turned into G-N-A-T, a gnat. The book was literally filled with gnats. And I felt like the author was having so much fun writing the book, and I could feel that. And that made me have so much fun just reading it. But yeah, we're following this complicated family, and they're so interesting. And I think by the end, it became a lot more plot focused, I think, than it needed to. Like, I didn't really give a shit about the plot. I just wanted to see these characters' relationships develop and grow and like see their personalities. So I felt like that was a little bit unnecessary. And then I think the only other thing was also the absolute end. It was extremely sentimental and extremely cliche in like a, oh. I gave this book 3.75 stars. For the translation challenge, I was also unable to finish this one, but I was so close. So close. I added in The Diary of a Void by Emi Yagi because this is Japanese translated fiction. Then for Around the World, girls, around the world, girls. For South America, I added 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This book follows the Buendia family in the fictional town of Macondo, and it's fucking weird. Like, weird in such a fun way, to me at least. Like, I was having such a blast. You follow this family over 100 years. So you go through the generations of this family, and each of them are so unique and strange and magical, and what happens in their lives is just kind of crazy. I reached halfway of this book and I was like, there's not a chance. Like, what else could possibly happen? Like, how are we going to fill in the other half of this book? But it delivered, okay? So much happened. It's a bit difficult to even talk about because just so much happened. But it kept me on my toes. It was really interesting. I just kind of loved it. I gave it 4 stars because kind of some of the weird things, like, I don't really know how to feel about this, even though I really did enjoy it. I'm just not sure. Then I added in How to Train Your Dragon by Cressida Cowell. It happened somewhere in or near Europe, so I just put it in for Europe. Yeah. I like the adaptation, the animated adaptation, a lot more. I think it was really fun reading this. I also gave this 4 stars, but I think the animation just does such a good job that this is fun, but it's not the How to Train Your Dragon movie. So it's just not the same. It's just not the same. Then for the Even Bigger Rainbow, I think I added Charlie and the Chocolate Factory for yellow. So Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I gave this 4 stars mainly just out of nostalgia. I was having so much fun re-listening to it, but the more it sits with me, the more I kind of want to lower my rating. Like, the way that this writer talks about fat people is it's so uncomfortable, especially as an adult. And then I also added in this weird, strange little cover of Quicksilver in for the silver and gold category. Yeah, no, it is what it is. Then, and I don't think anything happened with the Make a Quote challenge. I think I added in How to Train Your Dragon. Then for the spooky creatures, the only one I was missing was Mermaid, so I was able to add When the Tides Held the Moon in, and now this is complete. Then for Become the Avatar, I added in The Caretaker by Marcus Kliewer. We'll talk about that now. For Earth, because of the trees, like, you're allowed to add plant life in for Earth. And then I added The Fires of Vengeance because clearly, look at that, that's fire. Those are flames. Fight me, those are flames. But also, obviously, it has the word fire in it. Anyways, so The Caretaker by Marcus Kliewer is a horror. I had high fucking hopes for this book because I gave Marcus Kliewer's first book, We Used to Live Here, 5 stars, okay? I was ready for another 5 stars. I was so ready for another 5 stars. But okay, let me tell you the premise. Look at him. Look at him. The main character sees this ad for a caretaker. She goes to the interview. The thing she's supposed to take care of is the house, and she has to do a bunch of weird shit to essentially prevent the end of the world. It's not really ever explained why she needs to do these things, which I didn't mind. I don't care that we didn't know why she didn't have to do them. I just wish we learned more about what she had to do. Like, the rites that she had to do were so interesting. Like, the prologue. Oh, read the prologue. Fuck the rest of the book. Literally just read the prologue. The prologue is my favorite part of the entire book. But that is not the book. The book is supposed to be my favorite parts. The main character as well, I do think her mindset and what's happening is supposed to represent OCD. And while I understand that, the main character's personality, I hated being in her mind. I hated her, what's the word? It's not uselessness, but essentially her uselessness when it came to doing these tasks. Like, they are absurdly easy. I'm not even joking. They are absurdly easy, but she keeps failing. And this is a slight spoiler, but there are no consequences to her failing. Every time she fails, oh, there's a backup plan. She fails that, backup plan. She fails that, backup plan. And I'm just like, what do you mean? It literally, every time she fails, it's like, you have to do this or it's going to be the end of the world. But then she does it, like, she fails the tasks and it's not the end of the fucking world. So there was no sense of tension because nothing was actually happening because of her failure. It did have an open ending, so things were kind of open to interpretation like his first book. But because the rest of the book was so unsatisfying, that ending made it even more unsatisfying. So 2 stars. Potentially even lower, honestly, with the way I'm feeling about it as I'm talking about it. This has been completed for quite some time. Animals are better. I added in Alice in Wonderland for farm animals due to the white rabbit. So I read Alice in Wonderland. It felt like a fever dream, but not in a good way. I was not having a good time. It literally gave me a headache every time I was listening to the audiobook. The plot itself was nauseating and like it was physically affecting me. So 2 stars. Loved the adaptations though and still adore them. I was glad I was able to see the origins of a lot of the references in the Alice in Wonderland adaptations, but I don't think I will be revisiting the book again, unfortunately. Then for wild animals, aka a whale, I added in Moby Dick. This is another DNF that I used. Like, I used my points to count this DNF. It's not a DNF, not technically anyway. For the purposes of this challenge, it is, because I've not finished this book by the end of this challenge. I'm having fun with it still. I'm like around halfway. I liked the beginning a lot more than what's happening now. Like, we're focusing a lot on whales and the sailing, but I really just liked the main character and his relationships and his experiences, and we've kind of moved away from him almost completely, so I'm not jiving with it as much now. Hopefully we get back to him because I like him. He was at least interesting to follow. I read not a lot, but a few children's books I've read that I've not added. The only reason I've added this one into my HRCYED is just because it fits so fucking perfectly. It's about this baby little elephant kind of finding her footing, kind of accepting change. It was so cute, and the art stunning. So this is The Littlest Elephant by Katherine Applegate. Read it. I've also read a little bit of The Wish Tree by Katherine Applegate, and that's also been very enjoyable so far. So she is maybe a children's author you should check out if you are interested in children's books. Then for La Queer Alphabet, I've added in the Book of Luke. One of the side characters is transgender and it kind of plays into the main character's story. It's about this reality show. Drama. But if you want more thoughts, you can check out my video. I don't really know if it should go in this category just because it is a side character that is transgender in this book. But at this point, it doesn't really matter because I'm not going to finish this category anyways. I did not touch this favorite HRCYED 1 prompt. I'm going to leave the BIPOC challenge because that is clearly the final key to my bingo over here. So I'll leave that for last. Keep you on your tippy toes. Okay, so the extended new release, I was so close. I was reading Sublimation, or starting to read Sublimation for June. I wasn't driving with it that well, and I was really struggling. This is one of my least favorite challenges. So I've added in That's Not How It Happened in November. I added the Book of Luke in December. I added Lost Lambs in January. Then in February, I read How to Kill a Guy in 10 Dates. Oh, I added this into the Rainbow Challenge as well. Forgot about that. How to Kill a Guy in 10 Dates by Shailee Thomas. I read that, I think, in February or maybe March. But this is essentially a rom-com and slasher mashed together. I feel like it balanced the two elements really well. I was constantly on my tippy toes about who the killer was going to be, and some of my theories were correct. There were many theories. I read this kind of as a read along with one of my friends on the Libby app. Like, I made a little book club for us, and I had so much fun, just trying to figure it out with her. Though I do think she did kind of give up halfway, but that's fine. That's fine. I still had fun. And the rom-com element of it as well, it was really fun. Like, the love interest was really intriguing, and he was sexy. Okay, he was sexy, and the writer had a way of making me feel his attractiveness. If you really enjoy slashers or rom-coms, the author makes a lot of references to both genres, but I just have not watched that many. And then I put You Did Nothing Wrong in for March. I put The Caretaker in for April. And then I used another one of my DNFs for We Dance Upon Demons by Vaishnavi Patel. This is essentially about a woman. She works in an abortion clinic, and this book is so pro-choice. It was so refreshing. It was so lovely. The author really used this book as such a clear platform for her to talk about the way that she feels about the pro-choice movement. I think a big part of it was mainly just the writing style that I did not really mesh well with. I feel like I was not as engaged in a lot of the character interactions as I was maybe supposed to. But the main character, she somehow ends up with the powers of a demon. And I didn't finish this book, so I can't tell you where it goes or what she does with these powers. But it was interesting, and I do think it is something you should try out. Maybe the writing style will mesh with you more than it meshed with me. Then, for the challenge yourself, I've added in 100 Years of Solitude, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Alice in Wonderland, and Moby Dick, all of which I have already talked about. The only one that might not technically fit is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Then for the non-fiction challenge, the only thing I've added in was Biased, with the topic of race and sociology. And then for Q's reviews and recommendations, one of her mini reviews, she was talking about When the Tides Held the Moon, and I have to say she enjoyed it a lot more than I did. So it was worse for me than what Q said. And then, finally, we will be talking about the BIPOC challenge. This one I had to complete because that one was the last one I needed for my bingo. Literally, as I was filling in my spreadsheet, it was the last one. So I moved some of these books into this. They were originally with other prompts, but I had to get this done. I wanted at least a bingo for this year's worth of hard work. I wanted a bingo. So I added in When the Tides Held the Moon because the main character is Puerto Rican. He's from Puerto Rico. Not my different accents in my brain fighting each other. He's from Puerto Rico. Oh my god. He's from Puerto Rico. Can't do it without rolling my R's. I'm sorry, I can't. It's physically, I hate the way it sounds without rolling my R's. Yeah, then I added in I moved in the coin by Yasmin Zahir because the main character and the author are because the main character and the author are Palestinian. Then I also moved in Julie Chan is Dead by Lian Zhang because, again, the author and main character are Asian American. I put in The Fires of Vengeance by Evan Winter because the author is Black. I think he's Canadian as well. Then I also added in We Dance Upon Demons because the author is Indian. I think Indian American. And then I moved If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English from the quote challenge into this because the author is Canadian Egyptian. There are quite a few Canadians here. I did it, bro, I did it. Now, for the final section of this video, I want to do a little bit review. We're going to go over some of these stats for my year, for the overall reading year. So for this challenge, I have read a total of 70 books, a total of 24,383 pages. Not sure how accurate that assessment is. It took me about an average of 2 weeks to finish a book, which feels about right. Then I had an average rating overall for the year of 3.52. The average book length that I read was 353. The average book length for audiobooks was about 11 hours. Most of the books that I've read I acquired in the year 2025, and the month that I read the most was July. So meaning the absolute first month that I did this challenge, that was when I popped the fuck off. Like, I was motivated. I read so many books. Then, looking at the prompts, the one that I read the most for was the Even Bigger Rainbow. Looking at the world map, the majority of my reads were from the USA, but I did have sprinklings all over. I have 2 from Greece. We have like quite a few random ones. I can't zoom in, so for some of the smaller countries, I can't really like zoom in. And then in the USA itself, the majority of the books I read were set in New York, specifically New York City, which I just found interesting. Like, what about my reading has drawn me to New York City? It's because Mamdani is my mayor. I'm from South Africa, but Mr. Mamdani is my mayor. The genre I've read the most of is contemporary literary and then contemporary fantasy. Means of which I read my books, the majority of which were ebooks and audiobooks. Most of the books I read were standalones. So most of the books I read were new. I didn't read a single reread, but I just think I don't really reread in general. Most of the covers that I read were blue. I'm drawn to blue, apparently. See, there's even like a blue, a dark blue, a light blue, and teal, which I would consider in the category of blue. Most of the books I read were rated adult, but this was my rating, my interpretation of what the book should be. So this might be inaccurate, but I'm also not surprised. I've really gotten over young adult at this point. Then the majority of the books that I read came out in 2025 and 2026. I'm not surprised, especially because I was pushing myself to read a lot of new releases where I wouldn't necessarily have. Yeah. And then with the authors, I read 3 Pierce Brown books, 2 Evan Winters, 2 Matt Dinnemans, 2 Marcus Kliever's, 2 James Eilington's, 2 Maggie Stiefvater, and 2 Cressida Cowell books. Where did I put the other How to Train Your Dragon book? Because I read the second one as well, How to Be a Pirate. I probably just didn't put it in any of the prompts, but I probably wouldn't have put it in anything that would have impacted the way that my final scoreboard looked like. Some reflection at this point. The hardest challenge, I think, was the new release challenge. I'm glad I kind of pushed myself. I was so close to finishing it, but I just don't really gravitate towards new releases. It takes some time, like as people read and as people review and recommend, for me to get interested in new releases. It was also really hard finding a book that I wanted to read from like the new release list. I would like scroll and keep fucking scrolling because everything I saw just didn't interest me. I was able to find a book every month, but it took some digging. The challenge that I wanted to complete the most is the 24-hour reading challenge. It's such a common reading challenge on BookTube. I want to do it. I want to try it. I want to see if I can do it. But at the same time, because you have to essentially stay awake for as long as you can, the health impact of that, I think, is what's stopping me from doing it. I have never stayed up an entire night. I always go to sleep, okay? If I sleep for an hour, it's fine. If I sleep for 2 hours, it's fine. But I've never stayed up for an entire night. So a 24-hour reading challenge would require some planning, especially around my schedule. Many times when I did have a weekend available to be able to do this challenge, I was simply just not in the mood because it's my weekend and I want to rest and I don't want to spend 24 hours reading. Like, I love reading, but damn. Overall, as you can see, my average rating was 3.5 stars. Especially this year, as the challenge kind of forced me to read very specific books to fill specific prompts. I have not read a single 5-star this entire year. I've not been really enjoying my reading as much as I should have. I think a good thing about this challenge is it's pushed me out of my comfort zone a lot in a very good way. Like, I think I've read quite broadly. Majority of the time, if I'm just reading, I read fantasy. Like, that's the genre that calls to me the most. But fantasy is long. Like, fantasy is chunky. And with this kind of challenge where, like, each book can only fill 2 prompts, it kind of, unless you're a super fast reader, it kind of forces you to read shorter books. While I do read books from these genres, I don't necessarily read them in this quantity. Ultimately, at this point, I don't think I'm going to ever do a HRCYED style challenge ever again. It's introduced me to readathons, and I was able to do the tarot readathon in the first month of July from last year. I am fucking proud of myself for what I've been able to achieve with this reading challenge. I have read so much, and I think I found it so fun figuring out. It felt like a puzzle that I was putting together, like figuring out what book can go into what prompt and then what's left over, and like what's the best place I can put this book. The spreadsheets overall, I was just having so much fun. I'm so looking forward to the latter half of this year where I can kind of just undo my button, let it all out, and just breathe in regards to my reading. Thank you so much for watching this. If you've gotten this far, I really appreciate it. I know I've been yapping. If you want to see more from me, please subscribe, leave the video a like, leave it a little comment if you've got anything to say, and then I will see you some other time. Bye!